You're listening to Different Kind of Gay with Mitchell and Goran. In this episode, we're talking about fathers, dads, father figures, our relationships with men, and why they might be this way. After our stories, we'll have our usual discussion and share more personal experiences. Trigger warning, this episode deals with suicide and mental health, and as always, all names have been changed. The older man I'm chatting to online cannot wait any longer to ask me a very important question.
Can I call you son?
I'm in my early 20s, he's somewhere in his 40s, or at least that's what he's told me. The age difference is not as staggering as it could be, but this question, which seems more like an urgent request, sends me hurtling back to childhood. I'm trying to remember what my own father called me, but what I remember most is this. As soon as she notices me approaching, my mother lowers her voice to a whisper.
Yes.
She trembles into the telephone.
I think he's being too hard on him.
Even at 8 years old, I know who the two he's in question are. Me and my father. And I know the hardness she's talking about. The weekly karate classes which he teaches. If Mondays are minty with promise and fresh beginnings, then Tuesdays, without fail, fill me with leaden dread. Every Tuesday after school I return home, change briefly, and prepare myself for the 30-minute drive with my father to his karate lessons. For most of the trip, we sit in silence, just the occasional yes, no, okay. I know why I am here, and not at home where I could escape into my room. I am fat, and my only friends are girls. The signs have been growing too obvious now. The teacher has raised concerns that I have never played soccer. My parents have seen me dismiss my He-Man figurines and turn to dolls. Karate classes are my necessary medicine if I am to be set right again. Bear in mind that this was the 1990s. Things were different. Even now, in 2020, some people still think going to the church can change your sexuality. Although martial arts gave my father a purpose, and a talent would take him around the world, karate could not change or repair me. When my father and I arrive on Tuesdays, silence slices the room swift as a samurai sword. His students, both adults and children, are aware they're in the presence of a king who commands respect. I should be dreaming of emulating him, adding to the glistening display of trophies in our living room. But my mind remains in whatever book or television program I left it to roam through, and this shows. Several times an hour I fail repeatedly at my father's instructions and must pay the consequences.
100 push-ups,
he thunders. I drop to the floor like a traitor, and maybe that's exactly what I am. Unlike the other rattish boys who are lightning bolts of energy, I cannot raise my leg to kick. My punches are feeble, floppy. I don't remember sequences or moves in the correct order. But I do like it down here, on the ground, attempting push-ups as punishment. I'm barely visible. I don't have to remember anything. It even gives me time to think. I wonder who hurts more from this weekly ritual of humiliation. My father is the teacher, the sensei, and I am his son. That must be so hard for him. Karate classes only last an hour, but me, this sickly imitation of a boy, is here to stay. My father left us twice, first after my younger sibling was born, and later when I was a teenager so he could be with another woman. The first time he left, we went to live with my mother's parents. My grandfather began an affair of his own at the time, justifying it by claiming my nana spent too much time with me and my sibling.
Those were the worst years of my life,
He complained, noting that his mistress at least cooked proper meals. Not surprisingly, I have always had a weird relationship with other men. Barely any relationship at all, really. With them I tread between cold and detached. At least if I'm quiet, they might overlook my failures. If I am with another man who is more intellectual, I become the pup that's eager to please. But I also hope like hell he never asks me to play sport with him. It doesn't matter if it's not karate. I am useless on a surfboard, a yoga mat, on any field or court. Although I believe in cultural theory that much of gender behaviour is shaped, not innate, I find it easier to be around women. In particular, I love roguish, abrasive women who live alone and could pass for asexual. Women who shrug off marriage and children like they're a burden and follow a creative life. Women whose disregard for the world only seems to make them more admired, not loathed. I wish I could be that sort of man. And even though I try, the truth is I left part of me on the floor, doing push-ups, still trying to atone for my mistakes. My father nearly died when I was 14. Struck down by a rare aggressive brain tumour which doctors said he had just a 10% chance or less of surviving, he survived. And as I sat next to him in the hospital after the operation, I listened to his slurred voice ranting anger, tried not to notice the card by his bed dotted with juvenile kisses from his lover. His anger was a scene that replayed itself for the next 7 years. He would call me and rage about how unfair everything was, dig up bones that had long turned to dust and expect me to grovel. On several occasions he left the country, married at least 2 more times without telling me. I was no longer afraid of him as it became clearer that I floated on the periphery of his wavy world. At some point, I knew none of this was worth it, so I terminated the relationship, and in honesty, I felt better for it. Feel better for it. He searches for me on the internet, leaving comments on any of the articles I write. I barely bother to read them now. Once I wished I could have pleased him. Although our faces are identical, I try to live a life as different to him as possible. I'm not talking about deliberately avoiding sport. I mean practicing virtues of patience, acceptance, honesty, the things I and so many others needed more than karate lessons. Years ago on a holiday to Norway, I met an older woman who was also a guide. In an act of kindness, she offered to drive me and another tourist from China out to the fjords where we sat by the snow and stared into the endless blue-green paradise. This guide was a Christian and explained how God had told her to move here from Central Europe, had been responsible for changing her life. And then she gripped my hand.
Let us pray for Mitchell,
She began.
because he doesn't have a father.
How does she know that, I thought? I'd barely spoken the whole time. Too content with the mesmerising mountains or the novelty of standing in snow. Perhaps a better question is, how couldn't she know that? My father left me, then I in turn left him, and the weight of this was in my eyes, visible to anyone who looks. So I think of that before replying to the unctuous man waiting in the chat room whose question lingers like a ghost.
Can I call you son?
No, I tell him. You are not my father.